Well, hello. If you look behind me here, you can see that I have the body on the car. It's been quite a while since I've made and posted a video on the progress of the car. The whole car to date has taken me about, I'd say an honest 2.5 months to build. And I'm building, usually 1 or 2 nights a week, and I try to get in a good half day or full day on the weekend. Of every weekend and every week, with very few exceptions. That's pretty much what I follow through. Over the Christmas holidays, I had an opportunity to do, obviously, more days and more focus on the car. But to date, that's, I would say, on my average, if I spread it all out over 2.5 months, that's what I've done. I figure I got about another month to month and a half left to work. My schedule initially was to build it within a year or two, and I'm way ahead of that. For a couple of reasons. It's a little easier than I thought it would be to date. Also, I'm outsourcing the body work simply because, and I mentioned this in prior videos, the judgment of my work, sadly, is going to be the initial impression. The initial impression is going to be the body work and paint. So no matter how much craftsmanship and time and effort I put on under the skin, or on the car, the chassis, and the drivetrain, the aluminum work, and all that craftsmanship inside, regardless of how much work I put on that, people will judge the car by its outward appearance, its paint body work. So I'm outsourcing that to a very well-known shop in Connecticut, which I've mentioned before is Metamorphosis in Connecticut. I'm going to truck the car down to him. He's going to do the car in about 8 to 9 weeks. Doing the car for him will include, I'll put the doors on, but he'll fit them perfectly. And I'll put the hood on, but he'll fit it perfectly. And but I do have to install all the pieces, the gas cap, for example. I have to install the seats and seat belts. I have to install the rear hatch, which on this Gen 2 car is quite easy. And I have to do an alignment. I have to replace a few things. Have to weld on some side bumpers for my gas tank underneath the skin, which you don't see. All that has to be done prior to shipping down. I actually have to take the body off the car again to do some of this work. It's going to make it easier. And with the modifications I've made to the body, it should come off easily, which is what the video today is about. The challenges I found to date with the car are, I mentioned this before, is the header fitment on the driver's side was hitting the corner of the driver's side foot box. So I made a modification to the foot box to allow clearance. It actually worked out quite well. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So I do recommend, if you find yourself running across that challenge, and a lot have, is to make this quick and easy modification during the build. Second challenge I found when putting the body on was, and a lot of people say these bodies are a bear to go on, even though they seem to come off so easy when you first get the kit. Well, the only main difference is the fuel tank. The stock fuel tank, which I'm using, if you had a fuel cell, you wouldn't have this problem. The stock fuel tank that I'm using, which came with the kit, the completion kit, it's a stock Mustang fuel tank, sits down underneath the rear chassis, the rear frame, and actually causes interference when you put the body on. What happens is you're putting the body on, the body wants to scoop underneath the tank and bring the rear end down, and it won't go on to the hatch area like it's supposed to. So we muscled with this for about 25 minutes, half an hour, my son and I, and we decided with a third friend here, or a third person here, that the easiest thing to do is to trim the opening where it closes down around the gas tank, the body does, it kind of scoops underneath the rear, was to trim that opening about 2 inches along the driver's side of that opening and along the back of the opening. That's all we had to do, and the body went right on. There's a little bit of fussing and fiddling we had to do up front here, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But that change, I'd almost recommend making that cut before you even before you even attempt to put the body on. If you have a stock tank, make that cut before you put the body on while it's on its buck. It's a lot easier. I used a jigsaw with a special fiberglass blade, and the fiberglass blade looks like nothing more than a blade without teeth, but rather has, I'll almost like some sand or metal grit that's been welded onto it. So it's just an abrasive bit as opposed to a blade, an abrasive blade opposed to a tooth blade, so to speak. And it makes a very clean, sharp, very polished cut, cuts through quickly, and not so aggressively that it's causing tears and that sort of thing. So you can get one of those blades, and I think it was $3.79 at a local hardware store. Make that cut, and that body will go on a lot easier. Everybody's spoken online about the driver's side. That's a continued project. Just the shape of the driver's side of the tank and how far over it is, it will always, almost guaranteed to cause interference with your body. I had that plus I had the one at the back, which really made it difficult to put on. So making those two cuts really sort of made the whole process much easier. Once we got the body almost entirely on, we found we had a problem up the front. And the problem at the front was, way back when I started dealing with this header problem hitting the foot box, I was tipping the engine back and forth. And what I found was the engine was actually a little too low on the passenger side, but almost perfect on the driver's side. So what I quickly did with the body on is I popped the headers off so I could get the motor mounts. I loosened up those two bolts and I twisted the body back, or the engine, sorry, back over up on the passenger side with a crowbar, quite honestly. Just you can wedge the tip of a crowbar and just kind of pick at it, and you'll feel the engine swinging over, and that's all I did, and that worked. And it barely dropped it on the driver's side, but raised it up about the inch that I needed on the passenger side, so then it suddenly fit in the two cutouts in the body. So that worked. The headers on both sides are still a little too far forward for the cutouts, and this is a problem I've run in with this whole drivetrain. Was the drive shaft that came with the kit was too short. Both of the emergency brakes were too short, and for the life of me I can't quite figure out. I have on the car now some DOT wheels which seem to be fit perfect distance wise, so I'm thinking, was my rear end too far back to cause all these problems? I'm not sure, but everything's fitting together with the corrections I've made. On the engine side, since I do believe my engine motor mounts were shipped reversed, which worked to my benefit because it gave me a lot of clearance on the inside of the footwells against the headers, which is most critical and very difficult to deal with. But I also noticed that the headers where they come out are right up against the openings, the front of the openings, so I'll just have to open those openings up a little bit more. I'm going to take the body off to do that work and put it back on the buck. I'm going to roll it out of the garage, cut outside, because the dust that it produces is ungodly. But I'll get those cuts done. While the body's on the buck, roll back in, I'm going to finish up the last little bit of work I have to do. I'll tell you this. I covered my dash and my center console with a cheap vinyl that I bought at a brand new, of course, but it was inexpensive. I think it cost me $20 for a long strip, 3 or 4 feet wide by 8 feet long. That's more than enough to cover my dash, to cover my center console, and to cover the switch stack between the dash and the console. However, I used a 3M Super 77 adhesive sprayed on the aluminum and on the vinyl. It stuck fine except for the edges where it rolled up a bit. So to prevent that from rolling up in the future, I took some black Gorilla tape, which you can buy at your home. It's a Gorilla brand. It's in an orange package. And I bent it around. I used that to wrap around the edge from front and back to make almost like a U-shaped channel to hold the vinyl on its edge. That worked for a few days, but then even the Gorilla tape, which is known to be super strong, started peeling away from the vinyl a little bit. So I took a second strip and sort of put it on the face of the vinyl, and it looks like vinyl, so it really looks like it matches. It's a nice edge, and that hasn't come out. That's permanently down. So that's what I'm going to run with. I'm very pleased with the way that worked out. What I have left to do, I got my battery box in, which I bought a Moroso battery box, just mounted in the trunk and drilled holes down through it. And it's vented and everything. It's a great piece of equipment, and that'll suffice the Department of Transportation. What I have left to do, aside from things I've already mentioned, is to put in my wiper. and my wiper motor and hook up my heater pipes to the engine. The heater unit, the vintage air heater unit, my one closing remark about that on this video is going to be about that. And that is the Gen 2 coupes have as opposed to having a flat or perpendicular firewall, they have a firewall that's tilted forward at 45 degrees. And the online community would suggest that you, which is what I did, you modify cut out a piece of the firewall, bend it so it's up, straight up and down, then mount the heater to that and sort of build a ductwork, if you will, around it. A much easier way, now that I've done it and I've looked at measurements, would be simply to mount the heater unit against the 45-degree firewall. It would turn the installation into a 20-minute job. There's plenty of clearance all over the place, and it actually pulls it away from the inside of the car and down a little bit. There's tons of room. Since I'm running a carbureted engine, I don't have the extra harness underneath the hood, so the easiest thing for me to do, or would have been, is just to mount that unit against the 45-degree tilted firewall. So I'll make that recommendation. Anyway, so far, those are the only real challenges I've had in this most recent installment of videos, but I'm sure I'll have more. A few other recommendations, the corrugated heater coolant piping. I matched up to a couple Ford stock 1.5 or 2-inch, I guess at times, heater pipes. I just chopped them up, but I try to get the elbows to use those instead of running a corrugated or in a corner. Just makes it a little easier for the installation. And that's about it. So stay tuned for the next video.